Michael Madigan, who stood at the very top of Illinois state government, stands convicted of 10 counts of bribery and corruption. Corruption far-reaching in scope.
Mike Madigan served as Speaker of the Illinois House for 36 years. That means he controlled nearly every bill that hit the floor for decades, from legalizing same-sex marriage to building new sports stadiums, tax hikes, and a lot more. In the wake of his guilty verdict, what happens next to Madigan, and what about his legacy at the State House? Couldn't have a better guest than a veteran reporter at the Chicago Tribune, the author of The House That Madigan Built, the record run of Illinois' Velvet Hammer. Ray Long, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Great to be here.
You got a sequel to write now.
Yeah, I've got a few more chapters.
Well, you were following the trial closely, of course, so I have to start off by just getting your reaction. Did the man who had this history, were you surprised that he went down, or did you say this was going to happen?
Well, it's very difficult to know what's going on behind the scenes in Springfield. And there are clear indications now that we can hear wiretaps that he was involved in things that he didn't want the rest of us to know. And so when we saw the briefs come out and the indictment come out, we saw that there were allegations that had to be fleshed out. And when I saw the trial unfolding, it was my feeling that there were some things that the jury could latch onto and justify a guilty verdict, and there were some things that they could latch on and justify not guilty. And I wasn't sure which way it would go, and it turned out to be a split.
And of course, you write about it, he was famous for not having cell phones and not using email and all of that. I know in my experience in trying to interview him, I often had to get permission from somebody tied to him to tell him to talk to Paul.
Yeah.
What was your experience with him in trying to talk to him?
Well, he became much more closely guarded over the years, and he became very guarded around the time that Lisa Madigan ran for Attorney General. And I don't think he liked all the stories that folks did about their relationship and the center of power in one family. And he cut back on talking to us a lot. Then he eventually came out of that, and you could catch him in between hearings every once in a while, and you'd catch him at press conferences. But he limited the number of one-on-ones that he gave over the years, and that became kind of this impression that a lot of people got that he was getting quieter and secreter all the time.
Or you catch him at Saputo's at night in Springfield,
You
sitting
could
at the
do that,
same table, same chair. You know, let me ask you a question everybody's been asking me as I do our own news, which is, has Springfield done enough to rid itself of the kind of Madigan shadow when it comes to ethics reform? I mean, is it a new day, or is it maybe a new generation?
Well, I think there's definitely a new generation, obviously, because people are coming and going, and Madigan is gone. A lot of good government types over the years complained that he was an impediment to some changes, sweeping changes that needed to be made, but they still haven't tackled sweeping changes. And as you know, Paul, we did this long series on culture of corruption at the Tribune, and we pointed out that there's a lot of loopholes in the laws that were intentionally put in. There are escape hatches to get around some of the restrictions, and there are weak laws for enforcement. And even the inspector generals are upset. One of them was so upset that she quit and said the law for legislative inspector general is a paper tiger. So there is room for improvement, and the question is whether or not there is the will, and that is always what it comes down to, and there's never been a big appetite. It's almost like they're allergic to reform.
Is it your sense that Madigan worked around whatever ethics reforms were around at that time, or that he knew how to do that, or did he just do what he needed to do in the face of whatever the obstacles were?
Well, I think that the reforms, or the laws rather, were actually fairly weak and fairly flexible. So he was able to maneuver with whatever law was there and work it as best he could.
I want to take a look a bit at his legacy, because in the lead in and into you, I mean, he did a lot over those years. Take me out 10 years, 20 years from now. How does history, and maybe there is a second volume to your book, but how does history look back at the tenure of Mike Madigan, the guy that did a lot of things, including turn the clock back when it was
Yeah.
time to get the Sox into the stadium, literally?
Yeah.
Or is it all about this corruption and this conviction?
Well, it's going to be hard to erase the stain of the conviction, especially if he does not win an appeal, which I'm sure he eventually
That's
will.
going to be tough.
And
If that he wins on appeal?
I'm sure that he eventually will appeal,
Yes,
is what
yes,
I'm saying. I have no idea, just like I didn't have any idea which way the jury would go. But he did do a lot, and he did make a difference. And there were a lot of things that you may agree with and you may not agree with. But, you know, when it came to things like drawing the district lines to help Democrats, it really helped change the dynamics in the state. When it came to winning the vote on the White Sox, as you mentioned, he was able to delay it for an extra 3 minutes and get the extra vote. When it came to standing up to Bruce Rauner, who wanted to change the state into more of a right-to-work type atmosphere, he stood up and didn't let the laws change. So he has a legacy that will be appreciated in some quarters, but he's going to have to deal with the fact that right now he's a convicted felon.
By the way, just a second left, but did you find an irony in Blagojevich getting pardoned the same week that Madigan goes down?
Yeah, it's a topsy-turvy law and order world we live in right now. Blagojevich was such an erratic governor, and Madigan was the kind of the adult in the room a lot of times, and they clashed, and Blagojevich goes to prison. Now he's pardoned and could go free, and Madigan could be headed to prison.
Anything can happen. Ray Long, first
Thank
of all,
you.
again, congratulations. I think your
Thank
book's
you.
going to get some new sales now. People ought to
you.
check it out. It's a really good book, too. Thanks for being with me, Ray Long. Still to come, President Trump continues governing by executive order. But will the courts put his agenda in jeopardy? I'm joined by Illinois Congressman Mike Quigley. That's next.